And we will now move into part 2, where we're going to reveal, for the first time, our top 30 big boards. And we're going to do some big board wars, where we debate and we discuss, and we try and point out what is the other one thinking. Coming next in part 2. Welcome to part 2 of the draft show. Big board wars are upon us. And those watching on YouTube, you can follow along. We've got our rankings on the screen at the minute. We're going to go through these 5 at a time, so listeners can try and stay with us here of who we are listing and who we have ranked. So I'm going to reveal my top 5 first, and then I'm going to hand it over to Chase to do his, and then we're going to pick one player who we feel we're probably the furthest away from with a consensus here. So I have my 1 overall player, Nikola Topic. Number 2, I have, as of this week, in build-up for this podcast, I revisit the film, Sakari Rizushi, overtaking Alex Sarr, who is ranked 3, Donovan Kling number 4, and Stefan Castle, the national champion, at number 5. Chase, over to you to reveal your top 5.
My top 5 begins Alex Sarr, number 1, Nikola Topic, number 2, back-to-back Ignite prospects with Matas Buzelis and Ron Holm II at 3 and 4, and then I got Cody Williams, younger brother of Jalen Williams, rounding out the top 5.
Okay, so interesting already. We have 3 different names in our top 5, and we don't have a single player ranked in the same level there. So already we talked about there's going to be a lot of lack of consensus in this draft, and we're seeing it already. Chase, I'm going to start. I want to talk about Cody Williams. I have him ranked 12th. You have him ranked 5th, which is quite a jump. Maybe in this draft, it's not like anything for me which is out of this world. I can see the theory, but this is the reason I have Cody Williams 12th. He's just a project, and he's a lot of in theory at the minute. If his brother wasn't OKC Jalen Williams, I genuinely think he would have lower draft stock. I think a couple of things. 1, people are seeing the development curve Jalen Williams went on. I think 2, they see the body that Jalen Williams has. He's like a powerful 4. And Cody Williams right now is like a skinny 6'9", very kind of like, he's again like 6'9" wing, but he's ultra skinny. And I don't think he has anything like the frame that Jalen has or will have. So for me, like I like him. He's a defensive wing. He has shown some playmaking, shooting skills, but it's all like the 3-point shot's really low volume. The playmaking's low volume. He came off the bench for his team this year for Colorado. I just feel like he's 2 years away. And for me, that like is a project I'd rather take later in the lottery than at 5 overall.
You know, I can't really argue or say I fully disagree with a lot of what you said, because he is a project, right? Like, he is going to be one of the younger players in the draft here at the top anyway. He has been, he's maybe the most inexperienced, I think is probably the best way to put it too. He had played the least in college. He missed about a month with an injury in the middle of the season as well.
Played with a mask on as well, which could affect, like, that's after he came back from the injury. Can sometimes affect shooting, can't it, playing with that mask?
Right, and he's playing in the Pac-12 with Colorado, which obviously is still a very high level of competition, but is not quite, SEC, Big 12, ACC level on a nightly basis anyway, in terms of the pro prospects that you go up against. So he's very, like, his film is just very raw in all aspects. Like you said,
what makes him top 5? What makes him jump for you? That there must be something here that you see a super high upside for potential wise.
Exactly. Like I said, he's a project, but with that project, like, I think you could really reap the rewards here in maybe 2 or 3 years once he actually settles in as an NBA player. Because, like, what you said about his frame, like, I actually think that, like, he does have a chance to fill out. Like, he looks like a guy that just he has like broader shoulders. He is like long and lean as well, but I think that's just by virtue of being like 6'9" and skinny. Like, how many skinny 6'9" guys also, look strong and built? Like, it's just a difficult thing to do at that age with that body type. So I think in a couple of years, you get him in an NBA strength and conditioning program. I wouldn't be surprised if he has, like, the leap that Jalen Williams took to keep the brother comparison going as a sophomore. I wouldn't be surprised if Cody has something similar this year, either like playing sparingly in the NBA, mostly in the G League, or whatever he chooses to do, or whatever his team chooses to do in terms of his development plan. I wouldn't be surprised if he takes like a pretty big leap, like physically, which then allows him to take advantage of the skill that he has. Like, I feel like a lot of people have kind of written him off as like a creator of any sort, which he hasn't had very many flashes of it at Colorado. And he's obviously, I think he was a negative assist to turnover ratio player there too. But to me, like, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Like, he wasn't shy to try to do things. He started the year pretty well, and then he got hurt. And then as he was coming back, he was kind of integrating himself into a team that had Tristan Da Silva and KJ Simpson, two like older players, and Eddie Lampkin also, that are like older, well-established guys that have like roles that they needed to play for that team to be good. So that's not really an easy situation to jump back into as an NBA draft prospect as well. But he checks every box in terms of like low volume efficiency. He is a pretty good weak side shot blocker as well. His block percentage is like 2.4, I believe, this year, despite being like a pretty skinny dude.
Yeah.
I feel like he has so many physical tools to take advantage of and has flashed in really key areas for a wing. Obviously, the shooting is the main thing, but I really think he's going to be able to take advantage of some guys off the bounce too. I think his athleticism pretty underrated now, since he seems to be like falling, I guess, in the consensus. But yeah, I mean, I just pure upside play, like no doubt about it. There are going to be 5 players better than Cody Williams as a rookie, but I think the long term, he has a much higher ceiling than mostly anybody that's not in my top 2.
Yeah. I don't understand how you can have like Zachary Rizachet 4 spots lower than Cody Williams, because for me, like, it's a better shooting Cody Williams. And for me, yeah, just before we move on to the next, for me, the biggest thing is his team didn't want him to have the ball in his hands. He was coming off the bench in a very low usage role. He was a good defender. That was like the best part of this game that popped to me on film. But like, I don't believe anything of the offense. It's a mystery box, like, for me. And the fact that you don't see it is a concern. Okay, let's move on to the back half of our top 10. For me, at number 6, coming in with some flames on it, Kyle Filipowski of Duke. Number 7, Matas Buzelis. Number 8, Reed Shepherd. Number 9, Isaiah Collier. Number 10, Jacoby Walter. Chase, over to you for the rest of your top 10.
My number 6, probably going to get a very similar reaction to my reaction to what your number 6 was, is Rob Dillingham. Number 7, Stephon Castle. Number 8, Donovan Clingan, going back-to-back with the UConn guys here, just like I did with the Ignite prospects. Number 9, Zachary Rizachet, who we've just spoken about at length. And number 10 is Reed Shepherd, round out my top 10 here.
Okay. Chase, I'll let you go. Where do you want to start on this next group of players?
I think this is probably going to be the player that we have the largest discrepancy on in terms of like where we have them placed on our big board. I am not a believer in Kyle Filipowski at all. I wasn't last year either. And this year I have him a little higher than I would have at this point last year, as I do now. I have Kyle Filipowski 21. You have him number 6. Yes, I'll let you have the floor and do the you can be the good cop and I'll be the bad cop for Kyle Filipowski here.
I mean, so I was trying to think of comps, like what is his role? And this is what I came up with. I have 3 players, shades of. I think shades of Sabonis, shades of Kelly Olynyk, shades of Wendell Carter Jr. Okay. Look, I referenced this community mock already. And every single person in the community mock put Kyle Filipowski to the OKC Thunder at like 12 or 13 or wherever they're picking. Because they were like, well, they want guys who have size, who have basketball IQ, and can dribble, shoot, pass, and defend. And he does all of those. And they gave him to OKC. Why do we keep letting the Oklahoma City Thunder drafting these guys? This is why I have him 6. There's not really anything I don't think Filipowski can't do. Okay, he's not a fantastic finisher, but he's a skilled finisher with footwork, with touch, with craft. He was the anchor. He played the 5 this year, the anchor for a really good Duke defense. That was not something like you take for granted, especially with white 7-footers. We know that is something that will be assumed as they're not a good defender. Filipowski is probably quite hateable. I get that. For a lot of Tarfield hands, I'm sure he is. But he's tough. He is a battling guy. This is like a guy who has like a Chet Holmgren battle in terms of like he looks like he's someone you can bully, but actually he's not. And I just think his passing out of the dribble handoff situations, his IQ, that's where I see the Sabonis rather than like the rebounding and the interior force, but more through like being able to use him in these dribble handoff settings. You know, some of the passes that he flashed this year at Duke, mostly at the post, but I'm pretty sure they'll translate to a more NBA friendly system and kind of DHO situations. I just think he can be a guy who, you know, you can run a DHO with him. He's got a threat of passing, but then also you can quickly rip through, put the ball on the floor and drive to the rim. And he can do it with fluidity and finish. So I'm a big believer in Kyle Filipowski. Like I say, like Wendell Carter, Sabonis, Kelly Olynyk hybrids, somewhere between the player of maybe Kelly Olynyk and Sabonis, something of that nature.
Yeah, I definitely lean more towards Kelly Olynyk than Sabonis. I will put it that way.
Kelly Olynyk will be 21 in your board. I feel like he's a
that's the thing
player in this year's draft.
I don't even think he's quite that good. Like Kelly Olynyk to me, and this is just like right off the bat because I have this in my notes. I feel like I've prepared myself for this discussion.
You knew this was coming. It's safe to say
did.
You knew Kyle Filipowski was coming. It's okay.
So literally the only indicator I think that Kyle Filipowski has that he's going to be a like stretch big is that he shoots a lot of threes. And granted, that is like a very strong indicator a lot of times. Some would say it's the strongest indicator.
I tagged you in space today.
There's a tweet going around today. That says 3-point rate is probably the strongest indicator for future 3-point percentage in the NBA. But the only problem is that like I feel like you still have to shoot a decent percentage on them. Like it's not 3-point rate with the implication that you're going to shoot 29%. You know, if you're taking a lot of threes and you shoot a terrible percentage, that's a tough thing to come back from, both like mechanically and statistically. Like there's so many things that you're going to set yourself behind there. But just from in one quick look here, Kelly Olynyk was a 78% free throw shooter his last year in college. Kyle Filipowski, 67%. Kyle Filipowski is a career 53% shooter on the inside of the arc. Kelly Olynyk was a 63% shooter on the inside of the arc. Their 3-point percentage is pretty similar, but I just feel like to be like a true stretch big, and also I think Kelly Olynyk is also, I think, more athletic. I mean, at the time, obviously not currently, he is more athletic than Kyle Filipowski, but coming out of college, I think he was a more appealing athlete as a big than Kyle Filipowski.
But a lot smaller, and doesn't have the same length of Filipowski. He had T-Rex arms. He had T-Rex arms, Kelly Olynyk, from memory. I think he had like a 6'9", 6'10" wingspan, I want to say.
But that may be true, but I think Kyle Filipowski's wingspan it might be negative, but if not, it's very, very close to
just on the shooting while you look this up.
Okay.
I don't think Filipowski has to be a good shooter to be an NBA player. Like for me, it's not like, well, if he shoots it, he can play. Like you look at Sabonis, the impact that he has just through his basketball IQ, being able to use him as a facilitator. That's where I really see the offensive value for Filipowski, is him being able to pass the ball, to be able to put it on the deck, to drive and kick at basically 7 foot. And that's where I see the value. If you can shoot it, that's a bonus. I think the form actually looks okay. I agree, like the indicators aren't great with his percentages, with his free throw shooting. You know, it's not really improved. I concede all of that. I'm not saying that he's going to be an Olynyk shooter, but like Wendell Carter is an occasional kind of like 3-point shooter. I think that is a more likely outcome for Filipowski.
Yeah, I see. I just don't know if he is a good playmaker from anything other than a standstill either. I have not been convinced that he can really do anything.
I'll send you some passes. Some passes.
All right. I definitely need to.
He had 3-point guards on his team. He had 3-point. You know, he's not someone who often had to like. He had Proctor, he had McCain, and then he had Jeremy Roach. Right. So he had 3-point guards on his team. All wanted the ball. His role was kind of to play like as the big anchor, to be a post presence, to basically draw guys and then pass it out to shooters. I think there's more in there that we got to see this year.
Yeah,
it's fine. We don't have to agree.
And this is definitely something that I just don't like. A high bigs.
You can miss out on the next Alperen Şengün again, Chase. It's fine. I'll be there. Honestly, taking my victory laps in a few years, and I'll be there telling I told you so You could come on the boat with me to Shengun Island version 2 with Filipowski, but it's okay.
Ooh. Yeah. See, oh boy. Yeah. I see. I think the problem is that bigs whose feel for the game is their best trait is probably one of my least favorite types of prospects.
Yeah, that
Because I
Jokic
feel
guy,
like
he's terrible.
no, see, I completely agree with that. But that's the thing is Jokic is like the best passer in the world. Like how many bigs
I
are
know. I'm
legitimate
joking. I'm
offensive?
joking.
No, I know you meant that facetiously, but like how many bigs are like legitimate playmaking weapons that aren't like Jokic or Sabonis, like genuinely the best passers at their position, probably. I
Draymond,
don't know, like
another one.
yeah, but Draymond is like a
Shengun, there's another
yeah,
one.
Shangun would count, but I don't know. Like Shangun also though, like he might be honestly, he might be a better passer than Sabonis if you want to factor in the fact that Sabonis is mostly stationary doing handoffs and gets some. I mean, now we're 52 minutes into the podcast. He gets some total bullshit assists off of those handoffs that he is not creating anything at all. But either way, like I just don't see Filipowski being even close to as good as either of those guys are. I think he would like a Kelly Olynyk playmaking like style and caliber is probably like his peak. And I also think he's going to be a much worse shooter. Probably not as good. He might probably as good of a rebounder, but he does have a negative wingspan, by the way. He is 7 foot with a 6'10" wingspan. So he does not have length or athleticism really in his favor. He's like, I guess, mobile for his size, but not a switchable big either. Like he just has a really
I
tough
actually think he's
role
okay
for
on
me.
the switch. I think he's okay on the switch.
All right. Yeah,
I think
I guess we just got to disagree with that one then.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to our next group here. We're moving on to the from 11 to 20 players, which is up on the screen now. Chase, I'll let you go first this time. Who are your 5 players ranked from 11 to 15?
My number 11 is the third most popular G League Ignite prospect, Tyler Smith. Number 12, Providence's Devin Carter, the Big East Player of the Year. Number 13 is Dalton Connect. And then number 14, Isaiah Collier. And number 15, Jacoby Walter.
Okay. And 11 for me, I have Ron Holland. 12, I have Cody Williams. 13, I also have Dalton Connect, our first snap of our rankings so far. 14, Jared McCain. And 15, Rob Dillingham. I think 10 spots below you. So again, you're beginning to see some of these names here that both of us are higher on and lower on, starting to come up a little bit. We talked a little bit beforehand. Do you want to talk about Jacoby Walter, Isaiah Collier, or Tyler Smith? I think they're the names that stick out for kind of comparing our 3 boards here on this ranking.
You want to go with Tyler Smith? I want to hear the case against him first, because he's honestly someone I haven't really talked about with anybody at all this class. So I'm curious to just hear what the downside is on him right now, because I've only been talking myself into him for the last couple of months now, really.
Yeah. I think he is a backup 5. And that's basically where my argument stops. I rank 20, which isn't like super low. It's probably around consensus. He's like maybe like 20 to 30 is probably his range. So I think you're higher than most. He is a stretch 5 who I think will be a good shooter. Like I have a lot of kind of trust in the form. He rebounds it pretty well. He has pretty good hands. Is an okay athlete. Has decent size. I don't think he's a difference maker defensively as a 5. So I think he'll be someone who'll be able to stretch the floor and rebound a little bit. I don't think he can really play make. I don't think he'll be able to score anything other than kind of popping out to the 3-point arc. So I just view him as a role player. I don't really see the high upside. So that's why I have him probably 10 spots essentially lower than you. Do you see more than what I've described there, or do you just value that archetype of player more than that?
I do value that archetype of player pretty significantly, like shooting stretch big that has relative athleticism, at least for their position. I actually do think that like his defensive film is like mostly bad right now, but a lot of it I think is just technicality. He does handle physicality really well in the G League. So I feel like he does have a little bit more upside, maybe, I think, than what you maybe think that he does have. But I mean, I also don't necessarily disagree with the fact that he might just be a backup 5. The only problem is that in this class, like backups probably does start around this range, like at least in, a medium outcome projection. Pretty much everybody drafted between 11 and 20 is probably going to be a backup in a weaker class like this. So I just feel like you would definitely take a shot on a guy who can play like a pretty specific role that is much harder for players to fill and like maybe adapt to. Like if you're a big that can't shoot, you're a big that can't shoot. And if you can shoot, you have just like a whole different world of possibilities and like lineup configurations that you can fit in or at least be effective in when you are on the court, because you don't need so much to be catered to you in the way that like we watch Nick Richards, for example. Like Nick just gets every opportunity like spoon fed to him because he can't shoot, he can't ball handle, he can't pass. Tyler Smith at least is, I think, he's not a great ball handler, but I think he could put it on the deck a little bit, especially when it's like creating a shot. And I think he will have a face-up game eventually if he doesn't have one coming into the league now and get to play like a little bit of a different style than you do in the G League, because that's not really a thing like at all, like low post possessions. But that's something him and Matas Buzelis actually, I think, will be better at once they're in a different role.
I think you value the specialism of the shooting as a center,
yes.
like whereas I value more the versatility of someone like Filipowski. So it's interesting. There's slightly different philosophies, I guess, in where we're placing value here.
Yeah, definitely. That's like a huge reason why I like him. Is just the archetype that he fills and what he could be potentially. And if you get him on the right type of developmental path, I feel like he could be a very effective player in a multitude of roles.
And if you're talking about the Hornets specifically, like he's not a guy who'll probably be in contention for the first pick, but if he was to be late in the draft. But they don't have a stretch five at the moment. And it would be nice to have that option to go for the bet. Oh, actually, they added Grant Williams. I forgot about that. They do have a stretch five. They do have a stretch five.
Stretch four. Well, definitely a stretch four.
he showed me enough that he can be an option there. Let's move on to our next five. My next five are Devin Carter at 16, so just a little bit lower than you. Baylor Shireman at 17. Tijan Salon at 18. Kevin McCullough at 19. And as the aforementioned, Tyler Smith at 20. Chase, you're 15 to 20.
So I start here with, I think when I heard this last time I watched film, the French broadcaster said, Tijan Salon is number 16, I think is the exact pronunciation of his name. So Tijan Salon is probably how the Americans are going to say that one. Number 17. yeah, right. Any English speaker, I should say.
Yeah.
DaRon Holmes is my number 17. Number 18, I have Kalel Ware. Nice run on bigs here, 16, 17, 18. 19 is the Australian freshman out of Kansas, Johnny Furphy. Number 20, we're going back to bigs with Yves Misi from Baylor.
Okay. I'm going to jump right in because I know you're a big DaRon Holmes guy. I know you were last year in the draft.
I'm ready.
I jumped back into the film. He's been one I was saving until kind of later on in the year. I just don't see it. I don't see how any of it will translate to the NBA. I think he is super skinny, very narrow. I don't think he has the size really needed for center, and he's an interior player. Like everything is just him basically posting up, trying to get passes caught in the post, which he does well. Like despite being skinny and narrow, he actually fights for position pretty well, but he lacks strength. He is just so slow and awkward defensively. And I just don't see how he will survive in the NBA on the perimeter as a power forward or as a center on the interior. Like just some of the defensive film, I thought was like he was just waiting for his team to get the ball back. I know he blocks the ball quite a lot. It just doesn't impress me from the defensive film I've seen. So I understand like sometimes you just look at someone with that level of production over multiple years in college and go, they've got something. They just have to find a way to be productive. And I think that's fair. Like we've seen that from like Luka Garza, who was caught on with Minnesota and graduated from his two-way contract. He's just a guy who found a way to kind of change his game and be effective. And maybe DaRon Holmes can do that. Even if it is, I just don't see it. So he's probably going to be in the second round for me.
So I think I disagree with everything that you maybe just said. Like I I think the main thing is like I basically have the same feeling about him as you do about Kyle Filipowski. Like I see a big man that can do like a little bit of everything on top of being really good in like some specific areas that are very impactful for big men to be good at. Like he averaged like 28, 3, and 2 this year. Took a huge jump as a shooter, is like a legitimate pick and pop threat on relatively high volume this year. He has great footwork and shot prep, like coming out of those screens. Like he steps up, sets hard screens, flips his hips, like makes pretty good strides, like going backwards to create space on those pick and pop attempts. And obviously being like 6'11", I think is probably what he'll come in at in shoes at the combine. He can shoot over pretty much anybody. It's a relatively quick release. Like obviously big dudes tend to not have like pristine mechanics, and he definitely doesn't. It's like somewhat slow and a bit like clunky. It like
very
his
low
back,
volume,
he like
very low volume.
he leans back a little bit into it too. But he's just shot. He like adding that layer of versatility as a junior too, I think says a lot. Like he was already one of the best bigs in the country, and he's only really gotten better after that as well. And on top of that, he runs the floor. Like he gets up and down as soon as a ball comes off the rim, and it's clear that he's not getting the rebound and his team is in possession. He's booking it, like sprinting to the other end of the floor, not necessarily even like looking for the ball, just making sure that he gets down and brings somebody with him so that his team can get some sort of advantage there. He's mobile enough to switch a bit as well, I think, and you see that in the open court as well as in the half court. He plays really hard defensively. Like you said, he is a productive shot blocker, but like to me, it does look good to me. So he has a drop defender profile. He can erase mistakes for guys. He can rotate. He can cover up for he maybe can cover like 4s, 5s. Maybe he can switch a little bit onto 3s. I think I've just always liked him and the style that he plays. Like I don't see why he can't become like a Nick Claxton type with like a pick and pop threat, and obviously not like a defensive player of the year caliber type guy like Nick Claxton maybe can be, but a very similar play style with a slightly lower ceiling and like a little bit of a different layer to his game with the shooting. I feel like spot starter, like backup caliber bigs are worth a top 20 pick in this class. And there's DaRon Holmes at number 17 for me. So
we're going to disagree. I think it's one where
totally
the NBA obviously didn't give him great feedback, and that's probably why he went back to school, right? So there must be elements there. Now, if they just said you need to go back to school and prove that you can shoot, I think he did a pretty good job to at least give people the idea that he might be able to. But my gut tells me that there's more than just that being the thing. Okay, let's move on to our last grouping here. Our players ranked 21 to 30. Chase, give us your 21 to 25.
21, the aforementioned Kyle Filipowski. Number 22, Bub Carrington. Best name in the draft class, by the way. Number 23, Dylan Jones out of Weber State. Ever heard of it? Last time somebody came out of Weber State, they ended up being a pretty damn good basketball player. Number 24, Baylor Shireman, the also aforementioned. I feel like we might be the premier Baylor Shireman podcast in this draft cycle.
Absolutely. Apparently so.
Yeah, and number 25, I am probably the premier Xavier Lee draft enthusiast. And I'm going to have the sophomore Princeton guard rounding out my top 25 here.
Yeah.
Maybe probably saying that name for the first time for many of the people listening to this podcast. So
21-25 for me, Tristan Da Silva of Colorado, mentioned him earlier. AJ Mitchell, Johnny Furphy. AJ Mitchell, by the way, Belgian guard. Very American sounding name, but he's actually Belgian. Johnny Furphy from 23, who you've already mentioned. Yves Missy and Antonio Reaves, who a lot of people probably watched playing in Kentucky this year. Kind of large size, 2-guard senior. And I don't want to spend quite as much time on this page, so I'm just actually going to go through here and give my 25 to 32. You can do the same, and we'll pick maybe one guy to kind of talk about here. So 26, I have Kalel Ware. 27, Bobby Klintman, formerly of Wake Forest and played in the NBL on the Rising Stars program this year's. 28, Zach Edey. I'm pretty sure you'll all have heard of him. 29, Ryan Dunn. And 30, Miami's Kayshawn George. Chase, you want to round out your last 5 as well?
Number 26, I have Hunter Salas. 27, I have Tristan Da Silva, just a little bit lower than where you've got him. Number 28, I have Ryan Dunn, a little bit higher than where you've got him. 29, I have Oso Iguodaro. Number 30, I have Portsmouth Invitational Tournament standout Isaiah Crawford.
Okay. Chase, let's just go one guy, and I'm going to let you, as a co-host, that you can pick who we want to talk about.
Yeah, I already said it here. I am going to be the Xavier Lee guy this draft process. He is, by all means, an unheralded prospect out of Princeton, played in the Ivy League. He's 20 years old, was a reserve last year when the Tigers made that Sweet 16 run. I believe they beat Arizona in the first round. They went 24-5 this year with Lee as the best player, 17-6-4, started every game, all Ivy League team. He's super shifty ball handler and deep range shooter, while being like a true point guard that is like good assist to turnover ratio, sets the tables for his teammates, creates looks for himself. Really, really good finisher at the rim. Like, despite playing in the Ivy League and being skinny, he is more than an NBA athlete. I think he's going to be able to create shots with his first step, using his burst to get by players. Very accurate playmaker going downhill as well, can run pick and roll. Really good at like falling into place, playing off ball, and then shifting into place as a creator. I think the playing in the Princeton offense probably taught him that. Just all around like a really, really good offensive player. And I think the defense is going to be pretty good once he becomes a little bit stronger as well, because he shows a lot of energy at the point of attack. So I am a big Xavier Lee fan. I think he has a very good shot at being a backup point guard in the NBA. And the mid-20s is, I think, where backup point guards can thrive in the draft. Like, that's where you get your value from. If you draft somebody like Peyton Pritchard or something at 27, that's like a home run, I think, if you can get a long-term NBA player out of that. And I think Lee has a good chance to be that guy. So got him at number 25. Who do you want to talk about here, James?
I need to go back and watch some Xavier Lee film.
He's
it's
awesome.
Not a guy.
He's so fun.
It is not a guy who always really kind of been in my radar. Has he got an invite to the G League Combine? I'm guessing.
Yep. Yes. He will be a G League Elite Camp invite. There are a lot of like really good players that are going to be at the
Could
Elite Camp.
He might go back to school, Xavier Lee? Is that possible?
I believe he forewent or has foregone the rest of his college eligibility. So I think he's in this draft. So
he's in. All right.
We're going
that's interesting for someone who's got years of eligibility left and is not even got a Chicago invite to be in. But interesting. I'm going to go Antonio Reaves. Probably late second round pick on a lot of boards. Look, a lot of people have seen him play. Went to small school, transferred to Kentucky. Really good size, strong frame for a 2. Again, is another like off-ball threat, but like does well enough to kind of like also dribble in traffic and get to spots. Really great shooter. Super deep range. I just think there's a lot of kind of like almost like Max Strus element to him. That's the second Max Strus shout out we've got in today's game, who was another senior who came out and kind of ended up finding his way, but he just has some moves that I see, like, a little kind of fake, go to a spin and flow to just moves that he's played against NBA level competition at Kentucky. He's played well. He was like, Cal was basically starting him, choosing to start him ahead of some of the Dillingham, Reed Shepherd. I think he's better on the defensive side of the ball, which is the reason for that. He has the good size. So I'm just a big Antonio Reaves guy. I think he's been trusted by a guy in Cal who is kind of like known for producing NBA prospects. Like, you can question his college coaching, but he's developed guys. So I'm going Antonio Reaves, first round talent, late bloomer. He's definitely older. He's 23, 24, but there's a lot there. I don't see what won't work at the NBA. I don't see what doesn't translate. So.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely got an NBA offensive game. The only thing that like scares me a little bit with him is he's very like unproductive as a steals and blocks and rebounds guy, but I mean, he has more than enough like tape on film, both from Illinois State, where he was like a electric scorer, and then he scaled that upwards to Kentucky and got even better against significantly better competition as he got older. So, yeah, I mean, it's hard to keep him out of the 25 to like 45 range, at least like being a draftable guy at very least, with how productive he's been over the last couple of years on a good team. Nonetheless, I
think both Lee and Reaves will be guys probably available when the Charlotte Hornets pick in the second round in the early 40s.
Absolutely.
With that Houston Rockets pick. So could be names to look out for. Probably two-way candidates, I would say, both of those guys, like in the eyes of the NBA, maybe rather than us, as we have ranked in the first round. But Chase, this has been Bigboard Wars. It's been fun to debate our Filipowskis, our Dillinghams, and everyone else, and to reveal our big boards, which we'll be posting out. So Thanks for joining me, and I'll speak to you next week for our mock draft after the draft lottery.
See you guys.